Um, I guess we'll get started. And since this is our first meeting, um, we have an agenda, but it's really going through items that the board's going to do in the future. Let me put the agenda up here. Maybe that would help. And so what I thought I would do is go through these items that we're going to be that we're responsible for, or what we need to do this year, and then I'll go over a presentation, basically reviewing things that was in the staff report, and then we'll spend the tail end of this of talking about what we need to do and maybe coming up with a schedule. It's pretty straightforward. In this first year, we really need to get the board functioning properly, I think, and then looking at what our work program activities are. We're at a little bit of disadvantage because typically we would do this earlier than January. We would have done it maybe at the end of the year for the new year. So then we can say we need this much money to do these projects, and then it would be in place for city council to say, okay, we like these art projects, we'll fund what your budget is for your work program. So we're at that disadvantage, but there's a lot of things we can do that don't cost anything, but we probably will come up with some items that we might need a budget for to do. And we'll talk about that. And that's where you today to talk about these things. One of the things we want to do tonight is to appoint the officers to get that done today. So one official business, that's what we'll do. So let's just get started and just you probably read everything, but I just want to go over these things and talk about them. Is what is our role as a public art board member, and also what's the role of staff. And so we'll go through this here quickly because it's more detailed when we get into the section that's actually in the development code. This is from the master plan. And one of the first things in here is to create and approve an annual work plan for public art. End time for the proposed public art budget to be incorporated into the annual budget project. Or process, it should say. So anyway, we're a little disadvantaged of that, but that's okay. We can get started on the work plan because we need to do that. Appoint task forces to work on specific projects. So if there's a big project, we could actually appoint a task force. One of the things I failed to do, and I'm getting started, is does everybody know each other? Maybe we ought to go around and introduce ourselves. I think everybody knows me, Fred Guerra, planning director. Let's start up. Why don't we go with the staff members? Diana, you want to introduce you? I think everybody knows you, but.
Diana Colavecchio, community development director. And I also worked with Fred on the master art plan. Let me just also take a minute here to thank you all personally for volunteering your time. This is a big commitment. Even though you plan to only meet quarterly, there'll still be things that you'll need to do, and homework and research and discussions that you'll have outside of this actual in the meeting planning time. So I appreciate all that you do to support this effort. This has been a long time coming. Some of you have been extremely involved in the art community locally. I mean, when I think of Danielle and Molly and the help jumpstart this whole thing to begin with. This is truly that we've really expected that this would have kicked off sooner, but we're really happy that we're finally here. So again, thank you for being here, and always feel if you can't reach Fred or Adam during these meetings or this process, you all have my number and you can reach me too.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Adam, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. My name is Adam Paul. I'm the senior planner with the city, so I work on planning stuff.
You'll see a lot of Adam.
Yeah, and most of the faces here, we had a constant communication with and were involved throughout the process. So thank you for maintaining that commitment and helping to see this through. Hopefully we can help this become one of the good news boards that our community gets to visit when they go through their requirements. But so thank you. Please let me know if you need anything.
I don't know if everybody's Hollywood Square boxes are in the same order as mine, but we can start on the second. Maybe start with Danielle. You want to go first? I guess I'll introduce people to go.
Sure. My name's Danielle Dietrich. I'm the executive director over at the Cauga Valley Art Center. Had the pleasure of working with most of you. Tom, I know of you, but I have not had a chance to meet you in person that I can recall. So I'm excited to be able to work with you on this project.
Okay, next, Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Mark Gillis. I'm the Director of Historic Restoration at Stain Hewitt Hall and Gardens.
And you're also on our Design Review Board. Mark is our City Planning Commission member, Design Review Board, at-large member on the board. Next, Arthur, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Arthur Croyle. Moved to the Falls about almost now coming on 6 years ago. As a retiree, I do two-dimensional artwork, but I spent my entire life doing art, graphic design, medical illustration at the university level in Iowa, Miami University. So I thought I was just going to knock out a few little watercolors, but something in me said, no, get much more involved than that. So here I am.
Thank you. Molly, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Molly Hartong, and I think I've met everyone at least on one occasion. I am part of Collide. I was one of the founding members, and then I sit on their board, and I'm also a local artist. I'm a graphic designer. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
Okay, thanks, Molly. Tom, you want to go next?
Sure, I'm Tom Sullivan. I've lived in the Falls for 30 plus years. My medium is steel sculpture. I like to give discarded items a new life. I've done work at the Akron Zoo. If anybody's been in the Kashmir Cricket, just about everything in the building that's metal come out of my shop. And was an artist in residence at Mother's Ball Gallery for about 9 years. And now I'm chief cook and bottle washer at Cosmic Works Studios. And yes, Danielle, we have met. I think I met you during a hard hat tour. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Lori, I forgot you to, by the city employees, you can go next.
Hi, I'm Lori Jones. I'm the administrative specialist for the department, and I'm the one who will reach out to you about every meeting, send you all your stuff. So if you ever have questions, feel free to call me, email me, whatever. And I appreciate all of you getting your emails set up that didn't already have them. So thanks.
Thanks, Lori. Tim, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Tim Gorbach, lifetime resident of the Falls. I'm a member of City Council, and I liked how Adam put it, so I'll do the same. I do City Council stuff.
Thanks, Tim. Rick, you're last.
I'm left, yeah. I'm Rick Krotchka, and I'm president of Triad Communications, owner of the Foundry Building, the old Falls Stamping and Welding building on Front Street. Born and raised in Cuyahoga Falls, but now a Bath resident.
Great, thank you, and sorry for not doing this first. I got into my PowerPoint without having everybody introduce themselves, so I'll go back to the boring stuff now. We're going through what your general role is. I think we ended up with potentially appointing task forces. If we have a big project and we think we need help, we have the ability on a certain project to create a special task force for that project. Because we need the help on that project, that would be the reason. Next item is review and approve project plans for proposed artwork commissioned by the city. So the next two items here is if the city does anything, commissions any artwork or wants to do any artwork, this board will actually look at those plans and approve that artwork. And this could be on city property, it could be in right of way, it could be in city parks. So anything that the city funds or commissions, this board would review it and make a recommendation. We would review if somebody wants to donate art to the city. We would review it and see if it's appropriate, if that's what we want. When art is donated, there is maintenance of that too. So those are the reasons why we want to look at those items. We also we'll get into this a little bit later, but if there's a planning commission project or something at design review board, and we are requiring some public art for from a developer, this board would work with that developer to come up with some type of appropriate public art. We would review any murals. There's always murals that people want to put up. Is it a sign? Is it mural? You are the board that reviews those murals and says, yes, it's mural, and it's not a Coca-Cola billboard. And then we would conduct informal meetings with private developers. Again, this is from what the Planning Commission would recommend, that a developer put some public art. The staff really supports everything you do. You have jobs and you have other things you have to do. So the staff actually, we would, once we figure out what those work plan involved, we would write it up. We would also facilitate the preparation, and we'll talk about that later, of maintenance and conservation plan. We would be there to process those murals. So if you approve a mural, we would make sure it gets done right. We also will write staff reports. If somebody comes in for a mural, we'll send a staff report, and that staff report would review everything about that mural, and we would give a recommendation. You can take that recommendation or not take it, but we would give a recommendation on that. And then we would provide administrative support for any grant applications. The board may say we want to apply for an NEA grant next year or something, and then we would put that grant together the best we could and submit it. And we would provide administrative support for managing the maintenance and conservation contract. So we are the staff for the Public Art Board. So one of the first things we'll do, and I'll go through everything first, but one of your first things you'll be doing is, I think today we should select officers. I want to go through that. The board must select a chairperson, vice chairperson, and a secretary. These positions must be selected from the voting members. We have 7 members, 5 are voting. The city council and the planning commission design review members do not vote. So the 3 people of the 5 voting members would be in those positions. So the voting members are Arthur Croyle, Thomas Sullivan, Danielle Dietrich, Molly Hartong, and Rich Krotchka. The 2 non-voting members are Mark Gillis and Tim Gorbach. One of the questions was on these officers. I believe that all members can vote for the officers. It's not a project, I think, as being a board member. And that would be something we can put in our bylaws. It doesn't say it in the bylaws. On the right there, you see that. It doesn't say that that only voting members can vote for members of the elected officers. So I believe, and I'm not an attorney, but I believe that we all can vote on it. I don't think it will ever be controversial, but that's just, and then the actual section in the code that city council approved and planning commission approved has that we can also have a youth representative. And that's something we may want to talk about, and we'll go into more detail. So that's what we want to do tonight. One of our first official acts. On the right here, it just goes over that. That's from the code, and we'll go there. So
A quick question on that,
sure.
if you don't mind going back to the.
Yeah, no, go. Oh, okay.
I had a question about the term expiration dates.
Yes.
As they were listed in there, the bylaws state that 2 shall serve for 3 years, 3 shall serve for 5. Right now, we have 2 serving for 5 years and 3 serving for 2 years.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I assume 2020 is not counted in that.
Yeah, we'll have to look into it. Let me go to, make sure I didn't type it wrong. So the original voting appoint 2 shall serve for 3 years and 3 for 5. When I look at this, we have we have some 2-year terms in here.
Yeah, there's 3 2
I
years
want
and
to-
2 5 years.
Okay, we're gonna have to get some clarification on that. I'll have to see how that was done at city council, but this is what it says in the code. We'll work out that detail. Thank you, Danielle. So in the code itself, we have a pretty specific set of requirements for the Public Art Board. And just as we have for Design Review Board, Planning Commission, and Board of Zoning Appeals. Probably our newest boards, the Design Review Board and this board, have the most specific organizational and other requirements. And so what it usually ends up happening is we take these sections at 1112.05, and then if the board wants to add anything in addition to that, we put those in the bylaws. And then once we come up with a draft of the bylaws, then you would then approve those bylaws, and those are the bylaws that govern the organization. They have to have at least what's in here, even though we have something different already in the first paragraph. But we had that. So again, when we go to 1112.05, it talks about the organization and how the organization is set up. We then talk about, the second is the qualifications. I don't want to go, you were selected based on these qualifications. I did want to talk a little bit about B3. At the discretion of the board may appoint an additional youth ex officio, it's non-voting representative who would serve for a typical school year term. The youth representative shall be a full-time high school or undergraduate college level student who is enrolled in a visual arts program or coursework and is nominated by an art faculty member. I think that came about when we were having meetings and someone mentioned that. We said, that's a great idea. So that's something we may want to think about as a board. Is there somebody at Cuyahoga Falls High School or University of Akron or Woodridge that would fit this bill? And would they want to serve for a school term, what's left of it? And again, we're almost mid-year, but I think we still should do that. Authorities and powers and duties in that development code, it goes through those. And again, I'm going to just pick out a few things here. Is first of all, the board is an advisory body to the Planning Commission and on artwork installation and public art projects that involve an established Planning Commission activity. And those activities extend to what we do on our design guidelines of the Design Review Board. And so if somebody puts a piece of work on a private property that we really have nothing to do with, then that happens. Where this is a public art. So if it's something that has to go to a review body, we review it, except for a mural, and we make specifications in there. So if anybody wants to put a mural on the side of their building, it has to go through us. If they want to put a sculpture on their private residential lot, we don't get involved. So again, board duties and activities, we create and maintain bylaws. We follow the policy procedures adopted by the Public Art Master Plan. That is our guiding principles. There is the master plan. So we follow those policies as best we can. There are times that we might in the next few years want to update it or change something. It's not working. We would make those changes. We develop approved policies and procedures. for guidelines necessary to implement the public art master plan, and that is our work program. The work program would really, more than not, come from what's in that master plan. It doesn't, all our work program activities do not have to come from the master plan, but that they should, most of them should come from that, at least for now. Develop, set priorities for public art initiative to an annual work plan. We talked about that. We create that work plan. We can have task forces. We're trying to see things we haven't. We maintain current register of public art in the city. We make sure it's maintained. So in this section, which would end up being in our bylaws, we would include this in there. Those bylaws also include cooperating with county, regional, state, and national private art organizations. Training, as there are art training that happens through the state of Ohio or public art. That's something maybe we can attend. Where one of the easiest things now is because of COVID, all these conferences are much cheaper and almost they don't cost anything. And so a Zoom conference could be something that we could attend. And if there is a cost to it, that would be in our work program. We say we want to go to a conference someplace, and it's going to cost this much money for 3 of us to go or 2 of us to go. We can put that into our work program. And then there's meetings and procedures. One of the things we talked about is the board shall meet at least quarterly or more frequently as needed. All meetings will be held according to Cuyahoga Falls open meeting procedures, and all board public meetings will have written minutes and shall be available to the public. A written annual report of public art activities, including case decisions, special projects, qualifications of members, etc., shall be kept on file and available for public inspection. One of the things we want to talk about is our schedule. I think probably because we're creating a work plan, a work program for 2021, is that we probably need to meet again, maybe in 30 days or so to fine tune our work program. And so we might end up having at least 5 meetings this year based on that. But that's something we can talk about as we move forward. I just gave you some examples of design review board. We talked about the other boards having bylaws, and sometimes these bylaws go into a little bit more detail than what the code section says. It says, it talks about if the chairperson isn't here, this is what the duties are for the vice chair and the secretary. And the chairperson works with staff to deciding the agenda. So it goes into a little bit more detail than what the code section says. Talks about in design review board, it goes into a little more detail about the meetings. According with public open meeting procedures, it talks a little bit about Robert's rules. Talks about a written annual report that they must do. We're going to do that anyway. It's already said in our bylaw or in the code section. And then it talks about a little bit about quorums and voting, and special meetings. And then one of the things that's really helpful that we put together in our bylaws is the order of business. And what's really good about that is if it gives cliff notes to the chairperson on a meeting. I think this meeting is not going to be as controversial, but things how the procedure of each meeting goes. And then if that chairperson isn't there, it's something for the vice chairperson to have available. And so we create this procedure that's used by anyone. So and something like that we can put in bylaws. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I think that the next step on this would be for staff to put this together as a draft for you to review. And at our next meeting, you can comment on it, and then we could approve those bylaws. And again, 80% of it is written already and it's in the code, but there are a few things that we might want to add. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. One of the things that we have to do, the code, is this inventory, conservation, and maintenance plan. And this is really mostly a staff process, but I wanted to go over this with you because it probably should be one of our original work program for 2021 is, and this is from the master plan. It says there is no comprehensive inventory of public art in Cuyahoga Falls. And we talked about that during the process of doing the plan. The city has several artworks in Kaiser Park, Front Street, and at the downtown library. The planning division should create a baseline inventory and map of artwork on public property. The inventory should also include basic information such as name, artist name, date of the artwork, location of the artwork, medium and dimensions, as well as information about how it was added to the city's collection. This project should be undertaken in collaboration with the library or the historical society. With the baseline inventory completed, the planning division would retain a professional conservator to prepare an assessment of the artwork in the city ownership. The assessment would record the conditions of each artwork, make conservation recommendations, estimate conservation budgets, and establish priorities. The projected conservation budget is a key element, and it should serve as a basis for ongoing city funding for art conservation. The conservation assessment should be completed a minimum of every 10 years. The implementation priorities of the assessment should be incorporated into each annual work plan. The planning division staff would outsource the oversight of maintenance and conservation to a qualified public art conservator. So this is something that we need to do now, and so we want to talk about that. But that's something that eventually that this board will approve that plan and help staff with the plan and any suggestions. But that's something that needs to be done. It's one of those first things we need to do. Just to back up again, is that we were going to start this process last year about this time, and we had approval by city council. We're actually looking at doing some of the first items we wanted to do, and COVID hit, and it really delayed us for about a year. So we're a little bit behind the eight ball now, but I think it's time to get started on some of these things. So the next item we want to talk about is the important thing is the selection of the 2021 work program activities. And again, the plan says that each year the Public Art Board should create or shall create an annual work plan. The work plan should identify projected sources of funding, priority initiatives for the city to focus on, and propose budgets and locations for specific projects. The work plan would also track projects that are still in process, special activities such as grant applications, community engagement, and planning and maintenance and conservation priorities. So basically every year again, we set a work program up that we try to accomplish that year. And it can range from apply for a grant, manage a grant, do a maintenance conservation plan, make sure that maintenance gets done from that plan, and also coordinate new projects. So generally a work plan, it says from the code, should be developed by the planning division staff and board, and it's a collaborative effort. And so what we would do is, and we'll start talking about this tonight a little bit, is to come up with some ideas for projects. And then for the staff to maybe build those projects out a little bit based on what you say. And then when we meet again is to try to fine tune those and then maybe approve a work program. This may take one more meeting or it may take two more meetings. How much we want to do. And so that's what we're going to start really talking about tonight. When we talked about getting started last year, we actually, the city, knowing that the board wasn't yet created or was in infancy. We started working on a couple with the plan set of immediate projects, putting some public art in the parking decks. That was one of the things that everybody said, oh boy, you go inside those parking decks or outside, and they're really, they're really just, cement, concrete blocks, and so we really need to maybe put murals and do other things in those decks. And so we started looking at that last year, and we were going to go out for proposal to do that, and we got sidetracked by COVID. We also talked about river totems, and I can tell you that one of the artists that we were working with on our grant application said totems wasn't really a good word, especially when we're working with indigenous people that we wanted to work with. And so, but we still call them totems. Basically, some things that guide people around near the river, and the partnership is doing some of that already. I think it would have been nice for us to review those things, but again, the board didn't exist. The other thing was Front Street streetscape utility boxes and planters, of putting these vinyl wraps over really the utility boxes. The partnership has done some of the planters already. They're doing the planters, and one of the things for us to do those utility boxes. Probably the ugliest things downtown are those utility boxes, and there are a lot of great examples. So that was one of the first projects, and then doing some placemaking and looking at that, how we can activate some of our public spaces downtown. Falls River Square, when there's nothing programmed for it, is a pretty dreary place sometimes. There's no one sitting there. It's just, same with Highbridge Glens. It looks nice, but no, is really to activate these things was the idea. And so other potential programs or projects at the city that was mentioned that are a little more administrative things, but that are needed. Establish ongoing funding for public art, either through transfer of community development fees or through set asides for capital development funds. One of the ideas that we do with large subdivisions is there is a fee that is charged for every house that gets built in a subdivision, and that goes into an account for open space, recreation, and we added to the code public art. And so we started that process a little bit, that if a new subdivision like Sycamore goes in or going in, there could be an account of maybe, I don't know, I'd have to do the numbers. It's pretty high because we charge it extra for each unit, is maybe that money could be going into a piece of art that we can work with the developer on. So there's a budget already for that. And there are some other ideas that the city talked about potentially. The next thing is streamlining the mural approval process by creating a definition of mural to the city code, which we did, creating an application, review, and approval process for murals and guidelines for murals. The latter we have not done. And so that's maybe something that we want to do as a board, is to create these guidelines. We have guidelines for outdoor dining. We have guidelines for in the design review board for how you clean a building, in the downtown. So we may want to look at this board as coming up with a set of guidelines for people. So when they say we want to put a mural, these guidelines is what they follow. So that could be a work program activity. And then the final thing was establish guidelines for the donation of public art. So like I said earlier, as we're starting a little bit late this year for the budget process, there are some things we can do administratively that are important foundations for other art activities, actual art activities in the downtown or in the city. One of the other things is I want to talk about, because we haven't heard anything about this yet. We submitted it. Everything was submitted when COVID hits, and nothing is happening. It seems like the state or federal government, or they haven't told us if we didn't get this. But we did submit a grant to NEA called the Our Town Grant Program. And the description of that program is it's called River in the City. And I'll just read with in the description of the grant. River in the City will bring new perspectives to the cultural, historical, environmental, and physical conditions between the city of Cuyahoga Falls, its key assets, its revitalizing downtown, and the Cuyahoga River. Again, this application was a joint effort between the city and Arts Now. We are the applicant, and Arts Now is the co-applicant. The project will begin with an artist-led research and community visioning process, followed by the creative events that provide fresh perspectives on the relationship and how to activate public spaces. So there is our planning and public spaces, activating public spaces, and conclude with a permanent artwork. The environmental artist, Stacy Levy, who agreed to be part of this grant application, and an indigenous artist to be identified, will lead the efforts River in the City, inspired by the Cuyahoga Falls Public Art Plan, and a new downtown streetscape will be the laboratory that unites arts, civic, and open space organizations and ongoing placemaking in public art. So this is a 3-year project that includes activating public spacing, doing some activities in that public space, bringing in a nationally known artist, and bringing in indigenous people to help with the project. And so when we submitted this in the fall of 2020, we expected to hear something by now. Well, not quite. We had spring of 2021, so we're getting close of getting things together, starting the project in really fall of 2021. So this could happen still. We thought we had a really good application, but these are really competitive applications. And it was sort of like when we applied for the Tiger Grant for downtown. It was like they hardly ever funded anybody on their first shot at it. Akron tried 7 times before, and then on the 8th time, I think they were successful, and they beat us out on the money because it was our first time. But it was something we put together, and this could happen, and it could be part of our work plan for the next couple of years or 3 years. So when we talk about developing projects, and I just want to go through this a little bit, is that process. And it talks about that in the plan. And I just want to go over this again, just to show how this works. So we come up with a project plan. So we come up with a project that will go in the work plan. We identify partners for this project. And this is how we're going to set up projects. We identify a project coordinator. We can establish a task force if needed. We then recruit and select artists. We contract with that artist. That artist comes up with a concept design. There's a final design that we approve. The artwork gets fabricated, gets installed, and then the project is closed out, and we make sure it's communicated to the residents and the area residents. In what I sent you in the staff plan, it goes into a little more detail of that. I'm not going to go into that as much, but these are the way the project plan is selected. Again, it goes into more detail of that. I will send you this PowerPoint so you'll have that after the meeting. It's just really taken from the staff report and put into this. And so this is the process that we use on all our projects. So any project that we're going to come up with, if we come up with 5 projects to finish this year, we would follow this project development and implementation process. And it will be written, and we can monitor it as we go through the year. I just took a quick example to show you what, if we had the parking deck public art project, we developed a project plan. Where do we want the art? What type of art do we want? Do we want murals? Do we want, something outside those parking decks, a sculpture? And what is the budget? What would be our budget for that? We want to have partners. Who are we going to partner with? We can partner with the Cuyahoga Valley Art Center, DTCF Partnership, Collide. Those are just examples. There could be others. Who's going to coordinate the project? Is it a small enough project that city staff can do it, or do we need to get somebody else like the Art Center or the Downtown Partnership to be the coordinator? Do we need a task force? If it's a small project, we don't need a task force. It's not needed. If we get that grant, we probably need a task force to help us with it. We want to recruit and select the artists and development concepts. That could be through an RFQ, an RFP, or it could be another. If we don't want to go through we have an artist in mind we want to work with, we can do that. And then the final design, installation, and promotion. So these are the key steps to these projects that we're going to create. So my talking is just about done. It took only about 40 minutes. And so the first thing that we want to do is we want to select officers. We can talk about this first. And then we want to select our meeting dates. When do we want to meet? When do we want those bylaws approved? Maybe next meeting, maybe it's not important next meeting. We want to start developing the work program. We can start talking about it tonight, or we can have a special meeting just on the work program. And then eventually, and I think it should be part of the work program, is you approve the inventory, maintenance, and conservation plan. On the right is just things that the city, the administrative support. So I'm going to stop sharing for a while so we can all look at each other. And so the first thing is, I think that we need to select a slate of officers. So I briefly talked about it with Mark earlier, and so I don't know, Mark, do you want to talk about it a little bit? Mark from the Planning Commission Design Review Board. So.
Well, I understand that some of the members have already been approached, and preliminary recommendations would be for chairperson, Rick Gatra, and then for vice chairman, we've got Molly Hartdog, and for secretary, then Arthur Croyle.
And we just looked at the names and said, maybe these people, we know Rick has experience. He started off the Downtown Partnership as a chairperson. He's worked with Stan Hewitt on their board, and we thought Molly with Collide, and we've worked with Molly before. And then we thought that maybe have Arthur if he wanted to be secretary. It doesn't have to be this. We just, it's a one-year term, and we thought we needed to get this started. So we talked about it and thought maybe this would be good. Do we have any comments or?
I think it's excellent choices.
I agree. I think those are wonderful selections, as long as they're okay with it.
Yes.
I think.
How about you, Molly? You're awfully quiet.
So if no one has any problem with that, of the three people, I don't know, Arthur and Rick, you guys, we briefly talked about it. I haven't had a chance to talk to Arthur. So, and again, when we have that list of activities like we have for, and Tom knows this with Board of Zoning Appeals, we had that list of how things happen at the meetings, and it makes it easier. So if the chairperson couldn't be here, the vice chair would have that script too. So.
If somebody else isn't chomping at the bit to be the secretary, I would not be offended, but I certainly would do it. I mean, but some people just really want to do it. Please, you're not robbing me of this.
I think with one-year terms, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to be the secretary.
Okay.
Lori
So,
makes really nice cheat sheets too, where you just fill in the blank and make
yeah.
sure you get them back. She does a good job of that.
Not at these Zoom meetings, I don't, but in real meetings, I do.
Do things a little bit different now on Zoom, but
I don't know if you're looking for a motion, but I'll
Yeah.
make a motion to approve the slate of officers as presented.
all right.
I'll second that.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I can't vote.
Okay. Okay. All right, I think we have a slate of officers. Okay, let me go. The next thing that we want to talk about, I had to put my cheat sheet back up here, is selection of the meeting dates. How do we want to, by law or by regulation, we have to meet at least 4 times. I believe that we need to meet more here in the beginning to get things together. And so I picked Thursday night. I don't know why I picked Thursday night, the second Thursday of the month, because usually we have a design review board meeting that night. And so it would be better that if we have a standing schedule of those meetings, that it could be the first Thursday of the month, or it could be the third Thursday of the month, or it could be we juggle design review board, planning commission, and board of zoning appeals on those nights. On the first and third Tuesdays is planning commission. On the second and fourth Wednesdays is the board of zoning appeals, and then the second Tuesday is design. Thursday is design review board. And so we try to select something that doesn't interfere with that. And so probably maybe the first or the third Thursday would be a standing meeting. Although we don't have to do that in the beginning here, we could say that could be our standing. We'll meet every first Thursday, but right now, since we're working through these issues, let's meet, on another night and try to get that done. I think we need a meeting probably in February to go over looking at those drafts of the bylaws, looking at maybe a draft of some ideas for a work program that we can build out a little bit more what we discussed tonight. And it probably February will be a good time for that. We may not be able to accomplish everything at that meeting, and it's up to the board whether they want to meet again before. So we end up having, 3 meetings rather close together, and then maybe there isn't anything to do in the third quarter. I don't know. We don't meet for fourth quarter.
I'd
So
like to recommend the first Thursday if I could. There'll be less holiday conflicts later in the year.
Okay.
I'm fine
And
with
then
that.
whenever.
I'm fine with Thursday also.
I'm fine with Thursday too.
Yes.
Yeah, ditto.
So first Thursday is okay with everyone?
Mhm.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I have to bring my calendar down here, and I don't have it with me in my basement. So
February 4th.
February 4th. Okay, that would be our next meeting. Okay, so that means we don't have a lot of time to get stuff together for this, but we don't have a lot to do for this first meeting, but we will meet the February 4th. Let me go back here.
The meeting time will still be 6 o'clock as well.
Is 6 o'clock good with everyone?
Yes.
Fine with me.
Okay,
Yes.
6 p.m. Yes, Tom. All right. The next thing is approving the bylaws. My thought was we would put together a draft and get that to you for the next meeting. Is that based on a little bit what we talked about? Is there anything specific that come out when you guys read that information that was that you thought that we haven't covered or we should in this board? Yeah, this is the first board, bylaws that we're dealing with Zoom. We haven't dealt with Zoom on anything else, but maybe that's something we might want to put in something that I don't know what, but even though the city allows public meetings to be on Zoom, maybe we want to create some guidelines of us doing this on Zoom. I don't know.
There are some basic guidelines that could be added, such as like being able to vote via email or things like that that could be put in the bylaws just so that we're all in agreement with it and a little continuity.
Is the Zoom situation, that's COVID driven, right?
Yes.
Okay, so our best, most optimistic view is that we'll have a couple meetings via Zoom, maybe 3, and then we'll have a standard meeting format in person. Is that right?
Hopefully, yeah. Diana, do you want to add something to that? I know you're going over things with city requirements.
Well, with respect to city council, they passed just a rule change. That's all they did, to say that they can conduct their public meetings via Zoom, and then they can simply undo that as soon as they want. Obviously, we're looking at the end of June before we would go back to in-person meetings, even with city council. And now we're hearing this week from Western Reserve Hospital that herd immunity will not happen until late July or early August. So all things considered, we're probably doing Zoom maybe through Labor Day, but it was just a rule change. So if you didn't want to mention Zoom at all in your bylaws, you could. And then at your first organizational meeting to adopt those bylaws, you could also just ask for a motion to adopt a rule change that the meetings would be held via Zoom until further notice.
There could be snowstorms and things of that nature too, depending on if the city building's closed. So it's nice to have that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think Zoom's going to go away. I think that, if someone could even be away somewhere, out of town and still be able to attend a meeting. So I think that it's not going to disappear.
Yeah, I think I agree. And that's interesting with snowstorm or something like that is the ability to still meet. And I don't know what city policy would be, how that would change, but especially with a board like this, that we're not going to really have 100 angry residents here. We can accomplish things sometimes Zoom easier than in person. But we'll try to, Adam and I will try to put something together with that. We'll put together a draft for everybody and have that available in February.
And Fred, my feeling about the bylaws is to keep them standardized across as these city organizations that, these committees that you're putting together, just because I think that it's going to get really difficult as, these groups grow, that just trying to have consistency at your end on how they're functioning. So.
All right, we'll look at that. And again, like I said, the code is pretty specific. I don't think we have to add a lot, but maybe we will deal with a procedure. I think it's important for meetings. So.
And it also helps the public too, because if they attend one meeting and know what that group's bylaws are, if the next group, the meeting they go to, they attend, if the bylaws are very similar, it makes it a little bit easier.
Okay. All right.
I thought they did a very good justice to the public arts plan too. It was very well integrated. I don't know who put this together, but
the bylaws?
The bylaws, the temporary draft
code
that you shot through.
Yeah, we went over it and made sure we got everything. Todd helped us with it, and so we made sure we got everything in there. So
from personal experience, I'm used to seeing more problems in bylaws.
All right. Do we want to now talk about potential projects for our 2021 work program? And I can put something on the screen if you like, or we can just talk about potential projects.
You had put at the top of your list that you were kind of already thinking and in the midst of doing the parking decks. And Molly and I both received another contact about somebody who is a business owner that's right in front of one of those parking decks. It's like, I don't know when this is going to happen, but the sooner the better.
Okay.
So I don't know how
That
far
wasn't
you
even
got in
what
your
we were
planning.
discussing, though.
Huh? Oh, it's not the one we were discussing, of course. It's still a parking deck. It's a start.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to, I mean, really, it's up to the board. Everybody, I think, agrees that the parking decks need something. You know, when we did when we brought in Robert Gibbs and we had him do a review of the downtown in addition to the marketing study. That was one of his things, that you really need to make these things nicer looking, you know. We ended up putting almost 4 million into them, but they were all went into structural and things like that. And so there was very little money to pretty them up, I guess. And he said that was one of it's the first impression, he would say, when people come to your downtown, is if they get out into a deck that really looks terrible, it doesn't look safe, it's not painted, that's the first impression they get. So we talked about then during the art plan process is let's do some public art in it. It would really be nice and so I think it's important. So and we don't have to do everything all at once. We can pick one deck, or we can do one thing in each.
Brett?
Yes.
Question, I didn't know if there was assumption that, or talk, whether you looked at them all as a giant project, or whether you wanted to parcel them out, if there's been discussion about that so far.
Yeah. You mean the decks itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to you how you want to do it. The budget is, I mean, it really depends on what we can get for a budget. And so when we were looking at this, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Molly we had talks about this, is that I think we were going to look at the blue deck and possibly the red deck first. And we weren't going to do anything with the green deck, but that was just a thing that we were examining, and we thought that the blue deck and the red deck needed more sprucing up than the green deck. So,
Well, I guess this becomes a question for the board members. To
Yeah.
me, it seems like there's money, which only when it comes to any typical project, finding money for something is usually the hardest task. If there's something to put towards it, it could at least help us to lay the groundwork, and kind of like Arthur was just saying, like if there's one deck, then the next deck, and then it becomes
Right.
a bigger project. That can kind of be built into things that are already happening, and then we can do additional projects on top of that. It's a thought. What do you guys think?
I agree. I mean, I think we need to, it'd be nice to start off with something that's going to be really noticed and make an impact. And I really didn't think, Fred, when you brought up what Gibbs was saying about people having an adverse effect of the parking decks because of their looks and related to safety concerns, that never occurred to me. So that's even another reason to start with those, and things that we can do to make an impact around the city visually for less dollars, as Danielle was saying, because that's always a consideration. And if we can get out there and really start showing some things, maybe that'll help attract some money for future projects.
There seems to be, I'm sorry about this, going back to the decks again.
Okay. That's okay.
There seem to be two challenges. One is a kind of a cohesive identity signage wayfinding system that unites all the decks that would be applied to the decks. And the other is a more visual, a statement, artist statement thing that could be designated, separately. I see those right now as two projects, and I recognize that one is kind of an Uber project, which is it's big, and the other there's a strong moment or strong feeling to get out there with some visible public project, to not get bogged down in all the details that some of these wayfinding undertakings would entail, and to get something out that's quality, and people would say, wow, I respond to this, I see it. So I almost see it right now as you've got two things happening that pertain to the decks, but maybe I'm misreading it.
No, I mean, that's, you're right. I think those are the two things. I think we were looking at more of the artistic side of it, potentially a project. We talked even about, if you notice, back in, I don't know, it was 2007, so I don't know, I can't even remember which date it was. We renamed those garages the red, blue, and green garage, and then we then put those big murals up there in red showing somebody shopping. And one of the thoughts that we talked about is taking those down and redoing those with more artistic. The frames were there already, but then it didn't handle of some of the things we thought needed to be done inside. And the plan shows some examples, and even we talked about that's more expensive is doing some lighting up those decks differently. Those get into a little more, so we could do a work program, a multi-year work program if we really wanted to, and say in 2021 we want to do these things. In 2022 we want to get more things done, and even do some lighting, and again, if you look at the plan, Todd has some examples. So that's what we need to decide. And I think everybody thought that those decks needed something still, and so that's what this board is here. That's what we want you to do, and Adam and I will put it down and put something together based on that. But yeah, that and again, that would be a pretty big impact project.
I think we need to come up with a list and then prioritize and maybe look at a couple years out, because people want so much.
Yeah.
They're yearning for it. And I think if people know what projects on the list that maybe would help funding, maybe.
So Molly, you mean a list, not just things in the parking deck, but other things also?
Right, like a work plan, maybe like you said, 2021, 2022, but we come up with a list as a board and then we prioritize by the year, like.
Well, let's put the parking decks on it first, and then we'll work on something with some ideas in each one. Maybe we'll work up a little bit of a work plan for each of those that you can review at the next meeting.
I agree with Molly. My feeling is that I would hate to say, let's do all the parking decks and spend all the money there, and then people's perception of the public art plan is that we painted or did murals on decks. It's just, I think that we would fall short of where we need to be.
All right.
Great.
Okay. Well, do we all agree that do we want to do something in the decks or one of the decks? Is that still okay?
Sure.
Well,
Yes, I agree with
in what capacity is that being asked? Because I think we're saying a lot of different things, and some of them are counter to each other. I think it's hard to develop a work plan without a budget. And I think what we're doing now is we're taking elements from the plan, as we should, and trying to establish the early discussions of that. But really, we're talking more about an agenda right now, because it's going to be just as hard to project into next year until we actually can see a budget in the fall, to try to kind of understand what we can help support the board with. So, I mean, that's just a little bit of food for thought. I agree. It's smart to look at these items, identify them, and then try to prioritize them. But you don't want to start out, I don't think, with a work plan that can't be accomplished and just kind of languishes for 3 to 5 years.
I think I appreciate the comments, but I think we move forward with the work plan like we discussed. We don't have to publicize the work plan, and we don't even have to implement it, but I think we start with it. We then establish some ideas of what we want to do in the decks, and then we figure out a budget or what that's going to cost. I don't really know how else we would move forward, Adam, because we're not going to know what any funding is off the bat. We need to start somewhere to get some idea of what we want to do. Now, you're right. We might decide we want to do project A in the parking decks and find that we just can't get the funding. So we'll move to project B or move some other things up. But I think we do need some type of idea of what we want to have happen and go from there.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, we do. And you're also right that we won't know what is going to be anywhere. We have to have some kind of starting block to move forward on. I think we can lean on the plan in part. But you're right, it needs to be established in some order. But I'll just say, just based on a couple of the other comments, just to make sure everybody's good with it. I think everybody here has served on a board, which is great, or is probably actively doing so in some capacity already, some with the city. But we will, still have to recognize the sunshine laws and open meeting laws. And even when we're on Zoom, some of the comments we were making earlier and about how to vote and where, I mean, some of this is just on least time from state law in terms of how we were able to adapt to continue to conduct public business safely, right? So, I mean, all this stuff will be out there eventually, and there will definitely be parties of interest and people in places that want to see, certain parts of their own agenda move forward through the public art board too.
Right. And I guess just to say one last thing, when I said publicize, I didn't mean that we were going to hide anything from anybody, but just to make an official statement from the art board, fleshing out all these details. This is kind of what we're coming up with.
Yeah, I wanted to go to the section here, if I can find it, on the decks. And again, the plan has specific things that we should look at. Of course, if I can find it here, at page 26, I can't see the page. Okay, we're almost there. It's pretty detailed. So it sort of gives a little bit of information. And one of the questions that Arthur had is that it basically says is use the art for also wayfinding. It says one approach for the red and blue deck would be to commission an artist to design colors and graphics that serve as wayfinding devices, linking the entrances to the parking decks and the pedestrian connections to Front Street. Another approach would be to commission smaller, unique projects. This could be an opportunity to replace the oversized signs on these decks, perhaps in coordination with renaming the decks. And then it goes into green decks of doing some artwork. And so it has some ideas here already, again, but it really depends on our budget. But it doesn't mean, we could decide as a group we want to do 3 small things to the decks in 21. And then look at a multi-year of lighting, and then we'll come back next year and then detail that out more.
I do agree with that, because if you look at the parking decks around University Circle, or if you look at any of Cincinnati, just done a fantastic job with theirs. And just give 3 colors. Most people can't remember what color deck is where.
Yeah.
Whereas it had a graphic or, like that, if there was something that would stick in your mind a lot better. And it's going to look a lot better too. We were building high rises that looked just like those parking decks, and everybody thought it was modern and futuristic. And it just all has the 1970s Mr. Brady designed it look. And this is a good way to take it to the next century.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll put together a draft work plan for this that you guys could add to it, critique it, take things out, and we'll come up with that. Even though we're really looking at 1 year, we'll come up with a multi-year plan of attack. But we all agree that decks are important.
Okay.
All right. So what else would you like to include in the work plan?
What you talked about that totem project, that you shouldn't call it totem project. Did that have legs?
I don't know. I'm not quite sure exactly where the downtown partnership project is. Let me stop sharing here for a second. They were doing some things, and I think it's funded, and I don't think anything's up yet. If somebody could.
They're on the path, Fred. They have Park and Rec going out to help them with construction. It's too cold right now.
You're breaking up, Anna.
They're ready to roll. It's 5 to 7 different. It's about 5 to 7 different markers, and each marker will have a phrase on it about the history of the river and the falls. And then eventually there'll be a component of augmented reality that'll be attached to that. And maybe more markers down the road, but most of them are right along the river. There's one in Highbridge Glens, a couple over that way actually, and then right by the river entrances by the boardwalk. And I wanted to quickly mention a couple other things for this group, so you kind of have an idea of some other things going on in the downtown area. In addition to those historical river markers, the Park and Rec Board has every intention of doing something different with the boardwalk next year. Some of it's already been roped off as being just unsafe to traverse. So you can't even go all the way on the boardwalk right now, but they have in their master plan, they had a couple alternatives of what to do with that boardwalk. And we've been talking in cabinet about having some public engagement meetings to just kind of get from the public some ideas of what they would like to see. And we have a couple alternatives, but it's going to involve either some additional access points to the boardwalk with ADA compliant ramps. And it's probably going to involve some other kinds of features. We have yet to decide what those are. We've all weighed in on those. Some are a little more elaborate than others, but it's, our mayor, he likes to have that extra wow factor to everything we do. So do not 1 minute think that boardwalk's just going to be reconstructed as it is in its present form and just look the same but be newer. That is not going to happen. It's going to be different what happens down there. So you do have that going on. So what I also wanted to mention then was when I'm hearing the word wayfinding a lot tonight, we had many talks with marketers about doing kiosks for wayfinding downtown and decided against it, that the footprint of downtown just isn't big enough to warrant the expense of wayfinding kiosks. So those will not be happening, and you need to know that. And then we also had the Downtown Partnership put together what I think is a wonderful map of downtown, and it's on their website, and I think you can even have printed out versions of that. So when you're talking about wayfinding inside the parking decks, I think what I really just kind of want to emphasize is that what we're looking for is helping people get off of Route 8 or come to our city who maybe have never been here before, know where the free parking decks are and how to get to them as quickly as possible. And we also have some intentions of doing some signage for that when they get off of Route 8. So really what I think we're looking for with the art component to these parking decks is IDing them as garages in and of themselves that would be identifiable whether you lived here or not. So for example, blue parking deck. No one, if you don't live in Ohio, you wouldn't even know what that is. But believe it or not, you can go into Google Maps and put in Cuyahoga Falls blue parking deck, and it does show up, and it will get you there. That we didn't even know that until about a couple months ago, and we figured that it does exist that way. But to the point, if you're in the city, or if you're coming to the city, and you're looking for a blue parking deck or whatever other new name we might give it, that would be easily identifiable, not just from a sign you see when you get off Route 8, but as soon as you turn and you can start to see these decks from the exterior of the decks, it becomes very obvious that that's the deck based on the naming of it and the artwork that's there.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, helpful.
So I guess the question is, what comes first? If you start putting artwork and the city changes the name, so we have to be kind of careful how we deal with that. And we'll figure that out. I pulled up the river totems, and I guess totems is probably not a great name, but they're really artwork that would be on the river. So it's a little bit different than what the partnership is doing. And it doesn't have to be, if you notice that little map here, it was really along the Cuyahoga River. It could be if we worked with the national park, or it could be in areas, and we talked to the national park of doing those river totems in other than the downtown. So and they're really not historical, they're just more artistic. So
Would
that,
any of that overlap with Arts Now and their project?
I don't know, what's Arts Now doing?
It's listed in here, the project they have going on in Akron that Arts Now is involved in. It
I
had
don't-
like the 3-year plan put in for it. They had gotten the grant to do it.
Was there anything in Cuyahoga Falls?
It said that we were one of the partners for it, I thought. I don't have the ability to scroll.
Maybe we're the informal partner. I don't know.
Okay.
I think you're talking about the same thing. I think it's the grant that was applied for and then COVID happened and we're still
Oh,
waiting. to
okay,
hear.
talking
understand.
about, yeah, all right. So maybe it was talking
Okay.
about our town grant. So that's what the river totems are. The idea was at one point to do one totem.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe that's something that could wait. What's everybody's thoughts?
Well, this is the pending grant that's, you're hoping here.
Yeah, no, I mean, the grant that we did is to do a work of art, a major work of art in the downtown. And also to do some placemaking, planning for High Bridge Glens Park, Falls River Square, and the North Plaza area where the fountain is. And do something like that. That would be some placemaking. And the idea is bringing in Stacey Levy, who does a lot of environmental arts. And then also bringing in. We had talked to some indigenous artists and bringing that in. And so doing something with linking the downtown with the river. That was the idea. So a lot of it was placemaking ideas. A lot of it was activities in the downtown that bringing in indigenous people to do some activities, and then coming up with this one piece of art. So that's the idea.
Okay.
Where are we at? We have totems, or do we want to do that? Or I can go back to my screen share.
I have an opinion.
Okay, go ahead.
I think it's important to whatever budget we can come up with for 2021 to do some original artwork, big, make an impact, let people see it. I feel like, I'm going to use the word, but I don't like it. Totems are small and not as impactful and may get looked over. So I know earlier the utility boxes came up too, but I would rather see original artwork. I'd rather come out of the gate strong.
So let's talk about that. The wraps. We thought that was well, it's not a big impact project, but it was something that could be done quickly in wrapping all of the utility boxes in the downtown. What's our thoughts on that?
I like what Molly said. I don't think it'd be interesting to find out what the price of the wraps would be. I don't think that would detract from a bigger project that Molly's speaking of. I guess we would find out, once we get some pricing, but maybe that's something that could be done in collaboration, or simultaneously with a bigger project. Like some of this stuff is, and Adam touched on it, is hard to make a decision and know where to place it in our in importance, because we don't have an idea of the type of money that's going to be needed to do a certain project. So I think we go back to where we were, come up with some ideas that we think we eventually want to do, get some type of budgetary pricing, and then we can make these decisions as far as, well, we only have the money for one big project, or hey, we could do this big project. We have X amount of dollars. What smaller project do we want to do at the same time?
is the work plan kind of like just getting our ducks in a row before we know the rest of it? So inherently, like if we were just talking about the electrical boxes, and even though they don't sound as exciting, at least if we know a general price point of where it starts, we
Yeah.
can come up with like the basic, like how we do a call for artists for it, what type of areas we want to start in. Like that's kind of like mostly the groundwork that if we know we can't maybe do as many projects this year as we would like, we can at least, you know.
Yeah, quite frankly, I think there's probably one project this year we probably could do. And are two small projects. There's other things like we talked about. We have to have that maintenance plan. We have to figure out how we're going to deal with murals. I mean, those are administrative things that we need to do. But actual art projects, I think that, we're probably budget wise and time wise to maybe two projects.
So to, maybe some things to consider with respect to that are that if you are prioritizing the decks, and we heard a lot about that, then you might be able to get something that is a big impact in terms of visibility and notoriety for the size of the structures alone, but their proximity to downtown, their identification with the city, and then have the easy wins of things like the utility boxes, where that kind of gets the wheels in motion of how the board will function and gets the arts community activated in the city. Hopefully in an affordable manner, because who knows, we've talked about that a couple of times. Unfortunately, we have to eventually put the budget aspect of it into perspective too.
I also agree with Molly though too, is that if out of the gate we decorate the parking decks and utility boxes, and we tell people this is what public art is about, I think their expectations of public art is something larger than that, something that is a sculpture or some sort of public art. So I don't know. I just think that we have to be, I think how we come out of the box is going to be really important too. And I know that a lot has to do with budget, but I do agree with Molly on that. I think that there should be a mix, but if it's all, I don't know, just putting stickers on structures, it's not going to go over well.
Well, what's kind of nice too is getting these larger sculptures might take us a little bit more time. Getting a chance to learn how to work with the city, how these work plans work and what the best flow is. It might be interesting to look at as what we can do and what we're planning. So if we know we can maybe accomplish this and we can maybe accomplish that, but if anybody comes up and asks us, be like, we're doing this, we're planning this. And here's the different artists we're talking to for this next plan and the bigger thing. Because the bigger thing that might be the inspiration of Molly's mind might not be on this list right now. And I want to let Molly run with it and think of all these fun and exciting things while we can still get maybe something accomplished this year too.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Has everybody seen the new giant mural on the side of the Civic Theater in downtown Akron?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Just, Akron's been niggling around and chewing on the edge of the cookie for decades when it comes to public art. And somebody, I think a fella from California, I might have that wrong, did that mural. And it's a mural. It's not a 3D, but it is the mother of all murals. It's amazing of art. And so that wow factor, that big thing could be exterior painting just based on that. That just takes my breath away. I can't believe it's in Akron, but there I said it.
It is beautiful.
And, something like that. So there might be a transition where maybe kind of killing the two birds with one stone. Yes, you have the parking decks. Maybe there's a lot of surface area. There's might be some potential that you can hit something just takes your breath away that is a mural or it could be 3D. I don't know, but I'm just saying I was a little more dismissive of murals until I saw that one, and short of the Sistine Chapel, which is still a little bit better. Amazing piece of art. It's just an amazing thing. So, that refocus that when I kept hearing mural, I thought, well, there's murals And then there's giant public art. But that kind of brought them together for me.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking though, as we're going through this, what if we were to use, like we're just using the wraps on the electrical boxes? What if we were to use that to see how well our process flows before we go trying our process out on something as huge as a parking deck? You know, maybe one or two, and not having a budget for the year, but a couple baby steps just to see how this is all going to play out and how it's all going to function, and then move from there.
I wanted to add that if I'm going to try to get a hold of somebody from the NEA and see what the status is, you know, that big project, if we get that grant, that is the big project. That is the big artwork in the downtown. So it takes care of that. If we don't get it, then maybe we can still try to do something. I have something in the parking decks, some kind of original artwork, come up with some mural regulations that we have to do, the maintenance plan, and then maybe the wraps. You know, I mean, that's a pretty ambitious project or a work program, and some of them are just administrative, but so those could be 5 things that we have on this year's agenda. So I don't know what's the thoughts.
I think that works. And I think also before the next meeting, I know I can share the historic trail marking, the signage that is going to be going up. It's very typical to what you would see along, you know, the towpath or whatever. It's you know, or in the national park. And there are those locations that are going to be downtown. So that's just it. In all this, you know, with this delay, there's a lot of other stuff that has taken place. The planners downtown, really, they turned out really nice. And it's, you know, again, you can mark that off the list. I think that, you know, they did a call to artists, they had them curated, and I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, you know, again, you're going to like some and you're not going to like some, but the fact is that there's artwork on the planners, original artwork on the planners downtown, and there was nothing there a year ago. So that type of stuff, and it was really affordable to do that. So, you know, wrapping electrical boxes, I don't think is going to be that expensive to do, but I think then the other major projects, we just have to look at how it's all going to work out, but along with the other stuff that's going to be happening, because just like the decoration of the parking meters that happened over the holidays, I mean, most people thought that was Downtown Cuyahoga Falls Partnership who did that, when actually it was the city that did that. So I think with all this other stuff that's happening there, you know, collectively, you know, the general public won't know whether or not what is the public art and what is all this other stuff that's going on down there. Hopefully it's all going to jive.
So anything else that you think we can look into to get back with you on the work program? I guess, let me put this up here again, the screen share. This was the actual page from those immediate next steps. And it shows, which I thought was interesting, is that this interior, this deck, of brightening it up. So it could be a mural inside the deck. So.
One thing I'd like to bring up too is a lot of people want to find a place to take a picture. Right now, a lot of people take pictures on the side of the Cuyahoga Valley Art Center, and I'm always so sad that it's just that plain color, but at least it's a pretty plain color. That was a very expensive wall to repaint. But even the back of our wall, that's just that solid color. Like, there are so many senior pictures at Cuyahoga Falls that they've paid photographers to come, and that's where they go. So anywhere that we can find that becomes kind of like the destination and the place that people want to go, on top of just doing the wayfinding to make sure that it, you know, embodies the color blue. We have so much opportunity to let these artists really grow and thrive and do really unique things in the space, which is fun.
So we could, I mean, there could be a project that we do a mural.
especially with the green deck. There's so much potential on what faces Front Street right there with all that just concrete.
Yeah, it's, and the lighting, you know, Todd had that inside the glass, you could put different things in there that, you know, that brighten up the glass portion too. So, so I think at this point, we need to maybe flush this out. We can do a little homework on these 6 items. And then when we meet in February is come up with, we'll try to come up with a project flow of them and some ideas. And I think, you know, we don't have a large budget. The city did budget money for the grant, in pretty considerable amounts. So if we don't get that grant, potentially we could use some of that.
Are we still in contact with Don Drum? I know he had made an offer to do a piece. Or should we reach out to him again? Hey, Rick.
I'd be willing to do that. I just, you know, again, I know we had talked with Todd about that, and there were because they didn't have the plan done and how that would be done. I think that it was just put on hold. So if there's a way to go about doing this now, I think that would be a great time to reach out to him.
That'd be a wonderful wow factor.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have a lot of ideas here, so maybe we can, Adam, try to get together and put something together, a little work program for each of those. Anything else do we need to talk about that you think we should try to accomplish this year?
I have a question just from my own ignorance for clarification. On the parking deck that has the lighting system, you know, the variable lights that are different colors, the one by Leo's, you know,
Green deck.
Is that considered? Is the city considering that in their art inventory?
I don't know. That was sort of like a surprise that the contractor didn't tell us that did the project, and to brighten it up a little bit, they had some extra money. I don't know how that was done, but I don't know if that is. That's a good question. I don't know if that's an inventory or not. I can't answer that.
Okay.
Well, we're going to establish the inventory at some point, right? So.
Yeah, but I did the definition of whether it would be the inventory. We'll have to talk about that.
We made a board to tell us.
Yeah,
Well,
what do you guys think?
It catches my eye.
Okay.
You know, it's not much, but it's good. So
It's visible.
just considered that an art asset or how that happened. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it from the highway. It's one of the first things you see coming down Route 8 at night is the different colors. You know, you got Breast Cancer Awareness Month and you got all the different things, and it's, you know, showing support.
I think because it's lighting and lighting can be viewed that way, that at least the repair and maintenance of that lighting would have to be inventoried.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm hearing is, yes, it is an art expression and it falls under the inventory, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Sure, and I think in the plan, you know, we talked to the use of lighting as an art installation, and that's just a reminder that all these things that Fred had put forth here tonight are because they're in the plan, and the reason they got their way into the plan is because that was the community feedback really that we got about, you know, where targeted areas and what types of art from the respondents came in that they'd like to see. But certainly there's more in there, and you've all worked a lot on all of this stuff, including our plan. And so it's good to hear, you know, a committed conversation here tonight. I think it's gone well.
And I think what we're here for, it's sort of like, you know, for years and years, our downtown, we had little boards and trying to renovate buildings, but there were no regulations, there were no design guidelines. Once we set the standards and we created the board, things get done in the proper manner. And I think that's, as we move forward in public art, is that we want to be able to make sure that that it's artistic, but we want to make sure that when things get done, they get done properly. So, and that's what we're here for.
I think it was a good first meeting too, and I don't think we should get caught up in thinking we have to. Tonight, we're making the decision for the entire year of exactly what art we're doing. That's not the case. We're coming up with some good ideas, but we need a lot more detail before we know what we can actually accomplish this year. And we're gonna next month. There's going to be more ideas presented, I'm sure. So we certainly can't think that we hang up the Zoom call and, oh my gosh, we didn't mention this and it's not going to happen. We have plenty of time. This was a good start.
And it may take 3 meetings or 2 more meetings to come up with what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. And we always could add to a work program in the middle of the year if it's really important.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Anything else we kept here? Well, how long we're almost
Hour
2
and a half.
hours. An hour, a little more, between an hour and a half and 2 hours. Yeah. Anything else that we need to talk about? The questions or what you need us to do?
Fred, just 2 things. First of all, I think I sense, at least from Molly, maybe others of you, that you do have these wish lists, these ideas. If you want to start channeling those to Fred and Adam and I via email, of some ideas that you had that maybe weren't discussed tonight, things you had thought of before you even came to this meeting or been thinking about ever since you knew we were going to have a master art plan. And then secondly, we also have art in our parks. I mean, we have that sculpture of the heron at Waterworks. We have to also at some point address art around the city, not just in the downtown area. Just making that point.
Right.
Right. And yeah, that's right. We don't, if we think, if you go through the plan, we talk about in corridors, we talk about in subdivisions. And I can tell you right now that we potentially, have a couple subdivisions that there's some money that artwork can go in those subdivisions if we want to work with the developers on that. The money is in our accounts. So there are ways of spreading this art around.
There is one point of clarification on that, just from a comment earlier so based specifically on what Fred just said, you could be looking at art installations that are on private property because it's encouraged to the development process potentially. So there could be things that go through the planning commission to council that end up before you that are not just strictly public space, but if it's in, an open space that would be owned by an HOA or something,
Right.
You could see projects like that in the future.
Yeah. And so, I mean, right now, there is a potential development right at our border, right at beside Hidden Lakes, that will create a budget of so much money that we can put a piece of artwork in front of that development and work with the developer and approve that. So Adam's right. We are going to get things that are just going to come to us that fall into this category, that's not in the work program, but are just going to happen like any other, planning commission, design review board, and those things happen. And so the work program is for us to have a plan of attack. Not that we can maybe do all of them in 1 year, it might not happen, but it's a work program that we're supposed to have. So, anything else?
Yep.
Nothing else?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
I'm good.
You do?
No, I said I'm good.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I think that does it. I want to thank everybody. Our first meeting, we will send out minutes. Adam and I will work on potential projects for a work program, and we also work on the bylaws. And I think that maintenance program should be one of our work programs this year. So,
Great.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Nice seeing
Thank
everyone.
you.
Okay.
Thanks. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Okay, let's see. Lori, you're going to stop the taping, I guess. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I said, I think I just have to hit end. So say your goodbyes.
All right.
Bye.
All right.